Hey, welcome everyone. Great to see you. So we're continuing our discussion on birds, but this is going to be the first time in a while that we're not doing a group of birds, like, oh, let's do waterfowl tonight, or let's do song birds or woodpeckers. But now we're starting to tie all of this together. And forgive me, every now and then if there's just a little background noise, I might mute a home computer or two. Tonight we're going to talk about birds and food chains, all right? Because very often when you talk about nature, someone might say, I'm not into, birds, I'm into plants. Well, birds are connected to plants with their, their pollination, their seed dispersal. Same thing, like someone would say, I'm not into plants, I'm not into bugs. I like birds or bass or trout or whatever. Well, all of these things are connected. And so that's the goal of tonight, to talk about the connections. Let's say you leave tonight and you're so moved by the connections and you're thinking, where can I experience these connections? Well, yesterday, a great bunch of birders and myself, we were at the Bashkill, which is about 20 minutes from here. Saw 5 bald eagles, 2 pairs just came and hung out for a while. But not only that, you might think, oh, autumn might not be the best time for bird watching. We saw rusty blackbirds. That's, you're only going to see them during migration pretty much. So this is like the perfect time to go to see them. We were seeing bluebirds, we were seeing brown creepers. So it was a great time to take a walk. Earlier in the week, we were at the Audubon Sanctuary here in Goshen, saw great birds there. So it's always a great time to go birding. Like you can see different things at different times of the year, but it's always of interest. And if it's a nice day and you're looking to get out, exercise, walk with a friend, we have so many great places around us, and they all have calendars. So if you wanted to say, oh, let me go to the Orange County Audubon, when is the next field trip? You would say, oh, this Saturday we're going to go to what a lot of you might know as the Liberty Loop, but instead we're going to go to Owens Crossing for the Wallkill National Wildlife Refuge. And if you say where's that? It's like, oh, it's kind of like the Liberty Loop. It's just the Jersey side because the parking lot's bigger. So there's that. So if you're looking to get out, if you're looking to go hiking with friends, you got plenty of places. You had a question?
No, what I was talking about, you said the blackbirds. We had thousands of blackbirds at our house yesterday morning. It was
So blackbirds are great. We have red-winged blackbirds at this time of year. You can get grackles. You can get starlings, which look like blackbirds, but they're actually different. But there's a rare species called rusty blackbirds, and their numbers are actually declining faster than the vast majority of birds. Like some estimates have they've gone down by like 80 to 99% or 90 like 5%. So blackbirds are wonderful. Okay. Could be grackles, could be hmm Uh, yeah, could be red-winged bike. So it's always a wonderful to see like a murmuration that they all shift, together. But the species that we saw this just yesterday, rusty, like it's always wonderful to see the rare birds, because we're worried about those. So how to start? Well, uh, essentially, let's start with a principle. All life needs two things. You need carbon and you need energy. That's just a living thing. All right. Because why? Your chemical reactions require energy. You don't build sugar unless you have them. And all living things need carbon because if you look at like this is protein, which is based on carbon, or lipid based on carbon, DNA, RNA, carbohydrate based on protein, carbon. So we need carbon, we need energy. And so all the birds tonight that I mentioned, that's what they, when we talk about them in food chains, they're eating things for carbon and energy, as are things that are eating them. Now, a lot of this will start with the sun, all right, because the sun, bathes us in energy constantly. So that's wonderful. And as you can see, so many things are going to eat green things. So here's a muskrat. So if green things are capturing sun's energy and then you can eat the green things, okay, that's where you're getting your energy. But also, these green things, very often they have the ability of saying, hey, I'll suck carbon dioxide out of the air, I'll suck some water out, and then I rearrange them a little bit, and now all of a sudden I have a carbohydrate, I have a protein. And so now, me, the animal, I just have to eat the green things. They did the hard part of making biomolecules out of carbon from carbon in the air. All right. So, green things are the base of so many food chains. Now you might say, well, there's like other things like decomposers, like we're going to start off with water. True. But a lot of that is decomposing the green things. So, the pond that's right behind us, right now there's leaves falling in, and then the leaves are going to decompose, and then there's going to be all these little critters that eat the green things. Now, I just lied to you a little bit because there's also brown things. But in the green things, what do I mean? Some bacteria are green. The blue-green algae are actually bacteria. So they're storing up energy and carbon. Slightly bigger are the green algae. They're green. They're storing up energy and carbon. Here are euglenozoans. They're green. They're doing the same. All right. But then there's some brown ones. So here's a brown alga called a diatom. Really important. You might not think about that much of them, but the diatoms release as much oxygen into the air as the rainforests do. All right. So diatoms in aquatic environments, their importance. There's all of these kind of things. And then, like I said, the leaves fall. And now you got dead green things, leaves, branches, etc. And so then a lot of things can be decomposers. All right. So there's just detritus, muck, just muck leaves and mud from the last time. But you got all these little guys who are like, oh, hey, I can now ingest that and get instead of eating a living green leaf, I can eat the decomposing remains of a dead green leaf and get some of its carbon and energy. So we have the base of food chains, green things, or the rotting of green things. Then we have the things that can start either eating them or eating the things that eat them. And there are animals. Now, I'd like to start off here. This is an animal. You need a microscope to see it. So a lot of us think like animals big, not necessarily. They're all these little tiny ones. So I'm starting off with water environments because we're going to get to the birds that are eating these guys in just a second. But you got all these little things. Now we could make another whole class about going through this little aquatic critter, that little aquatic critter, this little aquatic critter. All right. There's worms everywhere. You have no idea how many worms are because a lot of them are microscopic. You walk on microscopic worms all the time. And all the pond water, all these little microscopic worms. So there's all of these little critters. We think of a lot of insects on land, all right, and there are birds that eat the insects on land, but a lot of them live in the water first, all right. So here's a mosquito living in the water. This one's a really cool. This is a midge, a flying midge, but it starts off its life in the water. It's got some red pigment in it to help it bind oxygen. So I have a whole playlist of all of these little things that you could find in upon these little animals, and the reason I start with them is because now that we have we got green things and we got little critters in the water.
There are many birds which are simply amazing diving.
Okay. Now we get to eat those. So now let's focus on the birds, which are in aquatic environments and how they might take advantage of, we have the basis of our food chain. Little fish can eat those little critters. So what are birds now doing? So if there's food underwater, and energy underwater, one of the things you could do is dive. All right, so you can dive underwater to get that stuff. So here we can see there are birds that dive. There's a penguin in the Galapagos swimming underwater. But then cormorants, they dive. You'll see them swimming on the surface for a while, and then they dive. All right, so we'll watch that. We'll get to the ducks in the next video. All right. Oh, actually, I just lied to you. Here's a little grebe. They can dive. We'll get to the ducks in the next video, but here's a whole bunch of ducks that we haven't seen yet this year because they come a little later, but we hope to see them any day now, the ringneck ducks. We see them diving. So if there's food underwater, there's green stuff, there's carbon, you can dive and get it. But there are some adaptations you probably need. So you just can't eat everything and be adapted for everything. So if you're going to be a diving bird to get some of this stuff, you're going to probably be a little larger. Your feathers are probably going to change a little bit because you think, feathers, flight. Well, flight's a problem if you're a diver because feathers that are really good at flying will probably trap air. And if you're like swimming after a fish and hoping to catch up for it, if you've got these buoyant feathers with have all of this waterproofing all over them, that might actually slow you down. So actually there are birds which reduce their wings like puffins or lose the ability to fly. They typically have shorter wings, these diving birds, larger feet, and webbed toes. So there's energy out there, but you have to adapt yourself to get it. And so if you're going to dive, then there's probably going to be adaptations for that. right? Now here you can see some ducks every now and then going underwater. And that is kind of a question. So if you're gonna, I'm recording right now. So if you're trying to identify ducks, that's actually a good first question to ask. Are you a dabbling duck that just kind of upends itself and puts its butt in the air and just kind of gets whatever you can reach? Or are you a diving duck? And if you do that, then you've split kind of the ducks in half, and that just kind of helps you identify them here. But here you can see a whole lot of dabbling ducks. All they're doing is just kind of upending themselves. So there's plenty to eat, but they're going to be in the shallower water. Now these here, the green-winged teals, they'll probably stay in shallower water, muddier water than many, and stay a little longer because their bills are special. They have a sieve-like set of serrations, so they can just kind of like go through like the muck, and then just kind of the water filters out, and they capture little things that a regular old duck would just miss. A regular old duck would probably be going for a bigger plant material or a bigger small animal. So if you're going to be around plants, just little modifications like modifications of your bills to have sieve-like serrations can certainly help. And I'm sorry, there's something in the chat. Oh, coots. Yeah, coots are great. We'll be seeing. Oh, pintails. Oh, I haven't seen them yet. I've been seeing the green-winged teals. There was someone in the chat saying they've seen green-winged teals and pintails. I haven't yet seen a pintail this autumn, but here's hoping. So you can dive like that, or you can really dive. You can do what's called plunge diving. So you could circle from above and then go deep. So you're not using your webbed feet to propel yourself. You're using gravity that you just kind of go. Now you'll notice here's this kingfisher. Look at its bill. It's kind of like a spear. So that when it hits the water, it's going to just kind of pierce the water and help it grab its fish. They're probably going to need a couple of other things as well. I mean, this is going to hurt after a while if you're just smacking your head into the surface of the water from a height. So you're probably going to now modify your neck muscles to absorb impact, streamline your body, maybe some air sacs, like especially around your brain. Like that would help just cushion some of the impact, etc. Maybe something else to cover your eyes. Boobies will lack external nostrils, so the pressure can't force water into your nostrils that way. And so once again, if there's food, and by that I mean carbon and energy in these aquatic environments, well, here's another way to go get it. You can dive after it, and some birds do plunge diving, right? So here's a blue-footed booby here, nice streamlined body, nice sharp bill, and here you'll see a couple of them diving here in a second. I swear. All right, so there was one there. There's another one coming. I shouldn't have built it up. I should have timed myself better. It's coming, I swear. There we go. Yeah, all right. So plunge diving is a way to eat. All right. But there's more ways to eat this aquatic bonanza, which is there. And so different groups of birds will then have different adaptations. One adaptation is to have really long legs. That way you can keep yourself out of the water. And still be walking through this aquatic habitat. I mentioned all those little critters that are in the water. So smaller birds, that's something that they could go after. Little water bugs, little aquatic larvae of things, etc. These are yellow legs, but they have a whole bunch of family, their family members called sandpipers, which their legs aren't quite as long, but they do the same thing. So these are a little different in size. We're looking at both greater and lesser yellow legs here. The bills are a little bit different. So once again, if you're trying to be really good at feeding on this aquatic life, does your bill turn up a little bit? Is it a little bit longer? Are you a little bit taller with longer legs? All of this will have an impact on what you can eat. I'm just hitting the highlights, and if anyone said, ooh, like there was a lot there and he rushed through it just to fit everybody in the hour, I have a YouTube channel called Dr. Jan 41, DRJAHN 41, and you can find all of this here. And I posted all of the recordings of the series so far. I'll post this one so you can find that playlist as well. If you ever have trouble, you can always let me know. So this bird's a little different. So it's in the same place as a sandpiper, but its legs aren't quite as long. Its bill isn't quite as long. And so it's going it's feeding just a little bit differently. One of the things you might notice it doing is it like nervously like taps its feet in the mud because that scares all the little critters that are in the mud and they'll start to wriggle away. And then it'll kind of feel and know exactly where to go. And so that's a different feeding style. So, you know, you can have different birds in the same habitat feeding on aquatic life, but having slightly different adaptations there. Pied-billed grebes can change the amount of air they trap in their feathers. So they can float like this on the surface, they can dive underwater, or they can actually just go like part way. All right, so they can go to varying depths depending on how much water that they decide they want to hold as far as what's good, uh, you know, for whatever hunting that they're trying to do. In some of my videos from last summer, I had some trail cameras that was catching a really muddy area. And there were Canada geese that were like trying to walk through the muddy area and they were just having the same horrible time that I do when I walk in the same muddy area because you just sink down forever. It's just so much work. But if you've got really big feet, that kind of spreads your body weight out differently and you don't sink anywhere near as deep. So the Canada geese were just having a heck of a time here. But there are things called coots that was mentioned in the chat that someone saw a coot recently. They have really big feet, as do these gallinules. And so they can walk on lily pads, they can walk on muddy areas. And so now feeding on the aquatic life there is a more of an option for those than it would be a big bird that didn't have that adaptation that would just sink, right? So a lot of little birds are feeding in that environment. Then some bigger birds as well. So here we see sandhill cranes. Sandhill cranes, not typical in this area, but you can find them. But we've been lucky that the Liberty Loop, and that's kind of like the area where we're going this weekend, has sand hill cranes that have nested here for some, I'm sure other people in this group might know better than me, but I'd say at least 5 years. So kind of a regular sight to see sandhill cranes in southern Orange County. And so they're eating a whole bunch of things. They're omnivores, but they're eating little animals. But instead of those microscopic things, they're eating like little frogs and baby fish and clams and the like. And their bills are sharp enough and they're big enough they can kind of use them as spears. Not only spears to get their food, but actually one of the adults was observed to have defended its young from a coyote because it's big enough animal with a sharp thing coming out of its face and made the coyote regret that it was trying to feed on its young. So we can have those. And if we were go throughout the world, Whimbrels, I think you can get on the coast here. This is from the Galapagos. But just look at that bill and you'll see it eat because the Galapagos made from volcanic activity. So you've got like all of these rocks with crevices. And as you might imagine, all these little fish and crabs and like who knows what in these crevices. But if you look at a bill like that, look at how it uses it. You can like angle that deep into crevices and capture things. So there's all of these different environments. You know, the crevices in volcanic rock is different from the mud that we would find here, but birds can then adapt themselves to eat that as well. So we can see this here. So that's a whimbrel. So that's a neat bird. Okay, so in this very room, like last week. So my general biology class, we dissect clams. All right. And the clams are hard to open and they come to us. They already have like a little wooden dowel kind of keeping their shell halfway open because it is not easy to open a clam at all. Like if it didn't have that little wooden dowel to help you, like it's hard. And even still, like you're like prying stuff over. So here's an oyster catcher. It eats a bunch of things, but it eats like clams and oysters. And if you ask like, how would you do that? Well, you see that long bill. What it does is it tries to like shove the bill in really quick and turn so that now the clam can't, you know, close. But this is a risky diet because clams are strong and it is possible for the clam to just like clamp down on the bill and not let go and the bird can die. All right. So this thing, once it opens there, it wants to kind of use its bill to cut through the muscles that the clam is using to hold its shell shut. But once again, obviously a very specialized diet for what would otherwise be difficult to feed on. Okay, then we have the herons. All right, so there's all sorts of them, all sorts of different sizes. So their long legs not only allow them to wade, all right, but it helps them also look like reeds. I mean, in swamps, there are just so many like thin plants. All right, and so a great blue heron that was sitting. I'm just gonna just mute a little background music if you don't mind. So, oh, I can't. Okay, sorry. We'll try again. And so it makes it look like a plant here, and it can just sit still until something moves. Now, just to remind you, birds don't chew. All right, no bird chews its food. Chewing our food is actually something special. Mammals are the only things alive today that really chew their food. Some of the dinosaurs did. Everyone else is just kind of chomp, chomp, and swallow. So you notice it was a whole catfish that hit the great blue heron's stomach. It was not like chewing it and processing it. It just swallowed it whole. And that's kind of what they do. Great blue herons have greatly modified their necks for a whole bunch of reasons, including like, if you know anything about your anatomy, vertebral column is in the back, and then you have the esophagus and the trachea in front. But great blue herons actually curve it so that by the time you get to the bottom, the vertebral column has actually swung to be in front. All right. And so that allows it to really like shoot its neck out and like grab a type of fish quickly, like just got to surprise them that way as in ambush. They also have modified vertebrae that let them hold their neck with that little angle that you see there, right? So herons, obviously, adaptations of the neck have greatly enhanced their ability to feed there. There was a song I played at the beginning. If you didn't hear it, I'm sorry. I know at home you can't hear it. Great. Okay. So in addition, there's then behavior. So here's one. So here's great blue herons also hunt at night. For those who came early, you heard me sing. Okay, so that's another aspect, like, not only how are you hunting, but when are you hunting? Are you coming out during the day? You're coming out in the evening is going to affect this. So great blue herons, you saw, have a great ability to swallow large things whole. This cormorant is going to be eating something that's about a third the length of its body. This is right up the road. This is a double-crested cormorant. They are also diving birds that can swim underwater after fish. Here it's got a long pickerel. And here you're going to see it swallow, something which is much the length of its body. So large stomachs, which are capable of distending, are obviously an adaptation here. Bird stomachs are split into two sections, what's called a proventriculus and the gizzard. I'll be mentioning the gizzard again a little bit later. But now birds can modify the relative sizes of those so that, based on whatever their prey is. If you're eating seeds, maybe you don't need, such a distendable area as you would if you're going to eat something that's a third the length of your body at a sitting. Okay. You often see cormorants doing this. Why? Well, once again, because they don't make their feathers as waterproof as, say, a duck would. They don't want waterproof. Waterproof would make them more buoyant. They want to be able to go underwater and swim and chase the fish. But there's a price to pay. You're cold and wet a lot of the time. And so you often see them just spreading out their wings so that they can dry their wings. Right, so that was cormorant. Yeah, so there's cormorants again. Frigate birds, absolutely beautiful birds. I mean, I always think they look like dragons, but just when you look at like their wingspan, beautiful birds. Usually farther south of here, but you never know, especially after a big storm. You never know what you're going to see. There are some bird watchers that go out after storms, like, oh, a hurricane came through, let's go birding, because you never know who's going to get blown off course. I saw a frigate bird in our area right after a really bad storm once. They don't belong here, but once again, birds get blown out off course. They're interesting because they feed, near the ocean on aquatic life, but their feathers aren't waterproof. So that's a problem. If they get wet, now they're stuck in the ocean, floundering around. They're sharks or whatever. So what do? They steal fish from other birds. So they don't really hunt. They just have all of these other birds like petrels or whatever, and then they feed. So like if you're a petrel and you're trying to feed your young, you know that a third of the time, there's going to be a frigate bird that hey, nice to see you. A frigate bird that gets you partway through is going to steal the meal that you were intending for your kids. So once again, there's a strategy. I don't mean to be critical. Bald eagles are great. They're not. They're not really great at fishing, though. Ospreys are much better at fishing. Bald eagles are really good at stealing fish from ospreys. Like if you measure success rates, a bald eagle has more success stealing a fish from an osprey than it does catching a fish on its own. So here you can see there's all of these different strategies, including if I'm not going to be the best one, in the world to, to catch fish, I'll try to steal from those who are. And here you can see like there's a sea lion that's trying to like cut a fish in half, and you see all these frigate birds that are like trying to like, ooh, is there anything I could steal, like if it comes out of the seal's mouth, rather than fish on their own. And so here are puffins. Once again, just a different way of hunting in the same area. They've greatly reduced the size of their wings, so they're not that good at flying. They can't fly very far, and they can have to like flap their wings a lot, like maybe even up like to 400 times a minute just to stay airborne. So that's a lot. But now their wings are really good for swimming. They can swim. Puffins are what we find in the northern hemisphere. Penguins are what you find in the southern hemisphere. So we don't have penguins in the Arctic. We've got puffins. Um, but they kind of do the same thing. They use their wings to swim. So they've modified that shape. You'll notice they've got a really thick bill. They can actually grab multiple fish at a time. They can come back to shore. They can have 10 fish in their mouths at a time. So there you go. There's another adaptation for how to feed on this resource. I've read this. I think I saw this once actually. Green herons, every now and then, like you're in the marsh, there's like all these little sticks or whatever. Sometimes they'll throw like little like pieces of plant material, little reeds, etc. They'll throw them in the water. Why? I don't know if when you were kids, like if you ever like tried to go fishing and maybe you didn't even have a fishing line, but like if you threw something in the water, like maybe the fish would come and check it out. So they're kind of almost using tools. They're like throwing out little bait to see if the fish come up to investigate, and then they grab the fish. So, kind of tool use, even a way of going for this this food source. So I'd like to switch more to land now, because I just kind of want to talk about food in general, how you get through those things, and I just say a few things about food in general. Birds fly, most of them. There's a price to pay. You can't have too much intestine if you're going to fly, right? And so therefore, as we'll see in a second, how do you manage this? Well, that's going to affect your ability to eat plants, as we'll see. We'll talk about woodpeckers. But two specializations that birds can have, they can have a crop and a gizzard. So what a crop is your esophagus. That's your food tube going down here. So you've got a trachea, a windpipe, and a food tube, the esophagus. It can be distendable because like if you take a dove, which is what this is, let's say there's all these seeds on the ground. All right, well, you don't want to like fly down, get a seed, go up, fly down, get a seed to go up. Especially since there might be a predator that comes suddenly. So very often what you want to do is just eat as much as you possibly can, like get like whole full of seeds, and you haven't swallowed them yet into your stomach. You're holding them in your crop, and then you fly up into the tree and can slowly move them into the crop and digest them there. So a crop is a good place to temporarily store something that you've eaten. Like bald eagles, they can eat a whole lot of fish that they store in their crop. So that's one adaptation. And a second adaptation is a gizzard. So bird stomachs typically have two regions, a proventriculus, that's kind of what you think of as a stomach, but then they have a muscular portion at the end called a gizzard. We'll get to birds on land in just a few minutes, but just to show you how muscular that is, if you think of a walnut, turkeys can eat walnuts, all right? And like if you said, show me your massive strength, crush a walnut, yeah, I'd bet money I can't, but a turkey can. It gets to the gizzard, and the gizzard just crushes the walnut. So not only can eat walnuts, but obviously it helps with acorns and the like. All right, so one of the things that can now help you are these muscular areas. But we know that there's so much green stuff on land to eat. I mean, just like we got deer, we got cows, we got giraffes, we got elephants, you got moose. You can get big eating the green stuff. But now you've got so much intestine that you probably can't fly. So there aren't that many birds that eat the green stuff. Like lots of birds can eat seeds or fruits. Very few birds eat leaves. Only about 3 or 4% of all birds eat leaves. So notice the RIA that we started off with, flightless. All right, so if you're not going to fly, then yeah, take on a little extra intestine to process foods. But like if you know anything about cows, just huge guts, huge sets of intestines. So if you're going to be really good at processing the green stuff, there's a price to pay. Geese and swans they're pretty big birds, right? And they're big enough that now they can have enough intestine to process the green stuff. Now they're not great at it. And I'm sure you've noticed all the goose droppings. Like if they were really good at processing the green stuff, there'd be fewer feces, all right, because they'd be using it all. All right, so they're not great at it. All right, but nevertheless, they can manage. So Canada geese, I know we take them for granted, but like if you see a bunch of them, like especially in winter, eating like grass on a lawn or dried grass, virtually no birds can do that. All right, so that's really something special about those. The swans, and I mentioned this on our hike when we were looking at the swans last week. For those of you who were there, they have so much intestine. The trumpeter swan is the second largest flying bird after the condor, and the mute swans aren't far behind. But it takes them all summer to get the ability to fly. So if you were a hatchling this year, a cygnet, just to get flight muscles, to get your big heavy body off the ground with all of that intestine, it's just now that you're getting that ability to do that. So we do have birds which can eat green leaves, but that's a rarity. Turkeys, like I said, with their really muscular gizzard, I swear, they can eat like acorns and nuts that wouldn't be available for many birds. Once again, price to pay though. They don't migrate south, right? They can fly, but by fly, I mean they can go from here to the top of the tree to escape the fox that's running around. But they are not flying south. They're just too heavy. They couldn't manage it. All right. And so the price then is they stay here. So if we get a heavy snow, they feed on the ground. What do? They stay in the tree huddling together. And if it's a long, cold winter with a lot of snow, then a lot of them die. All right. Just because, they can't scrape through the ground to get stuff here. So, it's great that they can get more of the nuts and acorns that other birds can't, but, a bit of a price to pay here. Okay, I'm just gonna, I think we got a cleaning machine going on. I'm just gonna shut the door. These are cordable flowers, and I know that they are not trying to attract. I know because they're red. Bees see red as the color black. So red flowers are not really trying to attract bees. And you look at the long tube that the nectar is in, you say, oh, that's a hummingbird flower. All right, so there are different ways to feed on plants and get the sugar and nutrients from plants other than eating their leaves. And obviously hummingbirds are going for the nectar, which allow them to pollinate the plants, and obviously a great benefit to the plants. Now, although we could rarely get a second species of hummingbird in our area, pretty much east of the Mississippi, we have one. The ruby-throated hummingbird is our one hummingbird. And I'm sorry, I used to know this. Darn it. Okay, so I think there's 10 hummingbirds in the United States. All right, in any case, so I happened on my way to Galapagos, I did a little in Ecuador. Ecuador is the hummingbird capital of the world, more species and greater diversity there than anywhere else. I remember we were going from Quito, the airport, down to the coast. And there's just a place, it's a long ride, so there's a bathroom break along the way. And the people have the little cafe where you can get a sandwich and a soda or whatever. They know the tourists love hummingbirds, as Ecuadorians do. And so they've got like hummingbird feeders up in the back. I saw, I think it was like 10 species in 10 minutes, just like at the table. So we'll never see 10 species here in Orange County. But there you're just sitting at the table, finishing your drink and like, oh, there's a species, there's another one, there's another one. And then the next place we went had more hummingbird species than the whole United States has. So just, different parts of the world, different prevalence of flowers. And then look at the bills of these hummingbirds. they're feeding on different flowers. Flowers have different shapes. And so there's a hummingbird, for example, whose bill goes up. And there's one flower that has a flower, the shape of it that way. It needs that hummingbird. No one else can pollinate that flower except for this species of hummingbird. Right. So not only do hummingbirds have a unique way of feeding, when you compare one hummingbird to the next, you see, slightly different strategies in the shape of the plants that they're going for. Hummingbirds are great. They're not the only birds who have thought of that, however. So here you see a bird that you can see in the Caribbean called a bananaquit, also feeding on nectar. And the flowers that it tends to pollinate are shaped to accommodate that bird. Notice, a nice firm place for the stand. It's not a hummingbird that's hovering, but the shape of the flower and the bill of the bird, they match nicely. Okay. So you can eat the leaves. You can feed on the nectar. And then you can then feed on seeds. All right. Now, plants appreciate that because, just the joke that I often use, I like, to students where your parents want you to be successful, but maybe not here, like there, like go over there and be successful, not here. And plants are definitely that way. Because if you've got an oak tree that produces a couple hundred acorns, if its kids are successful, where do they grow? Under the oak tree, taking its water, taking its sunlight, taking its nutrients, and all competing with each other. That's not good. And so plants make seeds, all right, with the idea that, yeah, I'll give the birds a little bit of food if they can then have the seeds pass through their digestive tracts and excrete them later where they can grow. And so doves have a big crop. Once again, they can go on the ground and feed on a lot of seeds and transport them away. So there are seeds and nuts. There's also fruits. All right. And so then a lot of birds feed more on fruits. And what you're going to find depends on kind of where you live. So you can see larger bills. Often we see them in fruit-eating birds. The toucans and the toucanettes are famous for that. Tanagers, really big on fruit eating. And some of you already know this because you were at that day, but at that lecture, but if you weren't, then I'm sorry. If you think you like scarlet tanagers, technically you don't, okay? And the reason is because when we start comparing genes and DNA sequences, we sometimes realize that the way birds were originally classified, not quite the way we would do it. So the scarlet tanager is technically not a tanager. It's a cardinal. So if you think you like tanagers, you're like, oh, I love tanagers. Tanagers are great, but you probably haven't seen many unless you've been to more tropical regions. So here's a cardinal. The tanagers, once again, if you were in like Costa Rica or Ecuador or whatever, here you'd see them. So our scarlet tanager is really a cardinal. Here's something called a cardinal. It's actually a tanager. So just, we'll drive you to drink sometimes when they start reclassifying things. So this is also a tanager here. Oh, and Darwin's finches, they're tanagers too. I'm sorry. I can't not say a word about Darwin's finches. So the thing about Darwin's finches that, was such the big deal is they're tanagers. But if you look at their bills, all these different shapes, right? Because we haven't got to the insect-eating birds yet. But if you're going to eat bugs, your bill's going to try to be narrow. If you're going to feed on seeds, it might be a little fatter like a cardinal or a finch. But then there are birds with really thick bills, which can now feed on seeds and nuts that most birds wouldn't be able to. So all of these birds are, feeding on, the fruits and seeds of plants. But, the width of your bill, all of these, mean that you might specialize in this plant versus another plant. Where these tanagers, so Darwin's finches are actually tanagers. Most tanagers are more better adapted for eating fruit. And in the tropics, there's a greater diversity of fruits year round. So that's the reason the tanagers are so good there. Okay. I was going to say on Sunday, I'm sorry, I've been doing so much. So yesterday, we saw at the Bashakil a yellow-rumped warbler, right? Which is late All right, warblers are mostly insect-eating birds. So their migration is September and October. That's when they're going to be. So here we are, middle of November, seeing a warbler. What's up with that? They eat more plant material than most warblers. Most warblers are pretty much insect only. But like they'll eat poison ivy berries that most warblers would never, try to touch. And they can eat other waxier things. So that's also a strategy. Look, if you specialize your digestive tract so you can eat waxy berries, well, that affects your migration. You don't have to hurry like, oh, it's September, the bugs are going away. I have to be, in the Caribbean, in 2 weeks. You can be like, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to just hang out in here a little bit. And so even in a group that's mostly insect eating, there can be, modifications that allow, some members to feed more on plant material. Okay. So black and white warblers, they are more typical where they feed on insects. But if you look at their bills, all right, slightly curved, they're instead of just going to be in the bushes looking for bugs, they just kind of hug trees the way that a nuthatch would. And their bill is a little curved and it lets them go into the crevices of bark and find insects there. So if you're going to eat bugs, turns out lots of different kinds of bugs and small modifications about like your behavior. The shape of your bill can let you access certain bugs and be good at it as opposed to another species which might be better at different bugs. Okay. So there are woodpeckers. I'll be talking about woodpeckers, but same thing as warblers. Woodpeckers feed differently. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker, and much of its diet, about a third, is sap. So see all the little holes in a row? It's not looking for bugs. It's just like making the tree bleed. It's trying to hit the inner bark of the tree where the sugar is so that the sap comes oozing out of the tree. And then just the way you would get a meal out of maple syrup, it's going to get a meal out of the syrup that comes out. But as you might imagine, that might affect where it can live because if you're in a cold area in winter, not as much sap. And so while woodpeckers in general don't have to migrate, yellow-bellied sapsuckers, a little more sensitive to cold because, when it's really freezing, sap isn't running. So they are a little more likely to migrate. And somewhere we're going to get to flickers, which eat primarily ants on the ground. So they definitely migrate, but we'll get to them. Cedar waxwings. Oh, love these birds. The crest, just beautiful colors. Here, they are one of the few birds that can get by on only fruit. Lots of birds eat fruit, right? But who could get by only on fruit? The orioles can, those tanagers down south could, and cedar waxwings could. That's an advantage because if a cowbird lays its egg in your nest and says, aha, this bird's going to take care of my young, and all you do is you feed your young fruit, well, the cowbirds die because most birds, they need protein, they need bugs, or something. And so there's an advantage. There's a disadvantage, but I'll get to that in a second because there's a song. This is great, all these cedar waxwings. This is right on campus here. These are cedar trees we have right behind the greenhouse there. And these juniper cedar fruits, quote fruits, they're waxy. A lot of birds have trouble with that, like bayberry, like a lot of plant seeds are just waxy and a lot of birds can't eat them. But then the birds that can, this allows them to stay all winter because now they got a food source that most birds can't eat. So cedar waxwings are not only really good at eating fruits in general, but also then these waxy fruits, which help them. And cedar waxwings in autumn. Look at that. No. Yeah, okay. So I apologize, just Zoom isn't kind to like switching between my voice and music. It tries to filter out the music as background noise. So I'll just play like a second of this. But here's a song I wrote about a month ago.
You're watching, you're feeding, don't teach us anything, food is the main thing. Alcohol, especially because we're late for a dangerous close talk, whenever food makes alcohol.
Okay. So there's more. But if you're going to eat fruit, I mean, what do we do with fruit? We ferment it, right? Like we have grapes, we have all these things, and we let it sit for a while and it makes alcohol. So if that's all the cedar waxwing is eating, are they ingesting alcohol? They are. Now, do their livers try to process it better than most birds? Yeah. But nevertheless, these are light birds. Like if you're a small person, that affects what you can drink because, drink might hit you a little harder than it does that bigger person. If you're a tiny bird, a little bit of alcohol goes a long way. So do birds fall off their perches? Yeah. Do they fly into things and die? Yeah. So drunk driving is bad. Drunk flying, not so good either. And so with, if you're going to live on fruit, that is, I think that's also with the hummingbirds. Like if you have a hummingbird feeder, you should try to change the nectar as often as you can because it ferments, and now the hummingbirds are getting drunk as they come to your house. Like if you're not changing it every day or two. Here's once again just poison ivy berries. Most things don't like poison ivy berries, but at the end you'll see a yellow-rumped warbler eating the poison ivy berries. Once again, not many birds, do this. The majority don't. But then also warblers typically don't. But these birds have modified their ability, to process things. So we're zipping along. Baltimore Orioles also really big on fruit. They are one of the other ones which can survive only on fruit for a little bit. It was a juvenile. Brown creepers are kind of like what we've seen if you're going to try to get bugs in crevices of bark, like a little narrow curved beak is good. We saw brown creepers yesterday on our hike. But look at the tail feathers. So just other things like if you're walking vertically and holding on the bark, that's kind of, scary. But if you can have stiff tail feathers, which you can like kind of rest your weight on a little bit, that's going to help. So both woodpeckers and brown creepers, it's not just about the bill, it's just also your feet. Can you grasp and hold on to the bark? Can can your tail feathers support that? So brown creepers. So there's bugs, and then there's different kinds of bugs. All right. So for example, these are cuckoos. This was a really good year for cuckoos. This is the yellow-billed cuckoo. In a second, you're going to see the black-billed cuckoo. Cuckoos are one of the few birds that can eat hairy caterpillars. A lot of caterpillars lay up spines. The spongy moths, what used to be called the gypsy moth, tent caterpillars. You can see that's like a little fuzzy caterpillar. Most birds, if they tried to eat a lot of those, it would irritate their stomach lining. That's why the caterpillars have hairs as a defense against predators that would feed against them. But then that's advantage when tent caterpillars erupt and then where there's a big population explosion. I know near the Wurtsboro area, the past couple summers have had the spongy moths really spread. Like in summer, it's July. You look up, a lot of the trees don't have any leaves just because there've been so many of the caterpillars. Well, now here's a bird that's really good at eating specifically that type of caterpillar. So that's a yellow-billed cuckoo. And then it has a cousin, the black-billed cuckoo. The same could be said of those. Woodpeckers eat insects primarily. They can eat a lot of other things from plant material to baby birds, but they eat insects primarily. But there are different kinds of woodpeckers. Flickers eat primarily ants on the ground. More than any other bird, they eat ants. But then that means while all of the other woodpeckers are staying throughout the winter, they're probably going to migrate because the other woodpeckers can make holes in trees and find stuff. But if you're going to feed on ants on the ground, obviously Orange County isn't, the best place in the winter. So most of our northern flickers will migrate. I'm just showing the tail because this is a yellow shafted woodpecker. Other woodpeckers, they've reinforced their skull so they can slam their skull into wood so hard that they make a hole. And then they have a tongue. Now, two types of birds have really long tongues. Woodpeckers one and hummingbirds the other. So if here's a bill, all right, the tongue is not just the length of the bill. It actually goes around the back of the head and ends at the eye on both of those. And that way, when they stick out their tongue, it goes here. This tongue can go way past the tip of the bill. So they make a hole, but then they've got this mucousy tongues, maybe even with barbs on it, that's now stabbing any little insects that they encounter. All right. So there are bugs in winter, but they're just hiding. But now some birds, obviously, they have the adaptations to help help get those insects. So we talked about like caterpillars on the leaves and insects on, like in the wood, or ants on the ground. Then there are flying insects. And so then a whole lot of birds, that's their thing. They go after the flying insects. So this is a fly catcher. This is the great crested flycatcher, a phoebe, a peewee. These are fly catchers. And so what they'll do is they'll try to sit on like, an open branch and just look for something flying by. Like bigger bugs are what they're good at, like dragonflies. They would be good at that, like even like bees, they would go. But then going for the little bugs, that's where we like get in like the swallows, the swifts, and the nighthawks. So there's a lot of bugs flying around. The flycatchers are better at the bigger ones. But then these as swallows, they're good at these smaller ones. They can eat almost their body's weight a day in flying insects. So when we talk about the value of birds, just imagine the additional insects that you would have to deal with in the summer if it wasn't for birds, that are eating, close to their body's weight in insects every day. And earlier, about a month ago, when they migrate, you can have like thousands of them in a flock. And I saw, I think it was over 1,000. I calculated like 1,300 swallows flying over Goshen. And so, certainly eating a lot of bugs as they go. A lot of bugs do this. Swifts do that, but they're not really even related, but just, modifications. So swifts, if you see, they almost never land except at night. And so they're always flying around trying to catch insects in the air. Nighthawks do that too. And I love nighthawks. I just, the long stripes on their wings, the white stripes, just, you see them flying, they're just flying around at dusk, looking for insects in the air. Okay. But there's more, because then there's dead stuff. All right. And so dead stuff, so there's issues. One, you have to have a really strong stomach to digest it, because otherwise, you're going to get disease. I mean, there's a lot of germs and things that are rotting. Also, see how the head is missing feathers? Why? Because then you'd get sick. If you're sticking your head into carcasses, you're just going to have all this gunk all over you most of the time. That's just asking for trouble. So notice that the vultures, they have these naked heads. You can see both the the black vulture with its black head, and the turkey vulture with its red head here. And this was a deer carcass just on the road to Goshen. Now, they eat meat, all right, but they almost never kill. All right, so they're really important in nature because one, they're recycling nutrients. But two, if we just had dead stuff just rotting all over the place, there would be more diseases. All right, so they're helping to keep Orange County, more disease-free than it would otherwise be just by eating, all of this dead, rotting material. So they have adaptations for eating the dead stuff, but now they don't have to hunt to the same degree. Okay. It's almost that time of the year where we can go start looking for owls. And then you see, oh, well, here's like a whole nother set of scenarios because rodents often come out at night. All right. And so the statistics that I've heard is if you take an area of, say, 4 football stadiums and light a single candle in the middle of the 4 football stadiums, that's enough light for an owl to hunt in that zone. And even if there was no light, their hearing is so good, they can hear mice under the snow. So if there's a couple inches of snow, an owl can go in because it hears the mice and comes out with the mice, not only hears them, but hears them so well that it knows where to put its talons. Some of the raptors have an unfair advantage because most birds can see in UV, right? And like, I don't know if you've seen crime shows that you go into like a crime scene and you have this UV light that lets you see body fluids. So they can see rodent urine. All right, so they're flying over and the rodent thinks it's being all sneaky, but they can see where they've been because they can see trails of urine like the trails that the rodents typically follow. And so we have lots of birds of prey that are feeding on the rodents. Harrier hawks will fly over a swamp during the day looking for rodents, and then dusk hits, and then the short-eared owls come out and do the exact same thing. So 2 different kinds of birds, feeding on pretty much the same prey, but just they use different times of day to do it. All right, so here's the harrier hawk doing just what the owl was, just flying low over the swamp, looking for rodents, looking for signs of rodents, and will just go down and pounce if it sees them. Right, and very like if you go to the Liberty Loop, it's like, oh, okay, the Harrier hawks are out, and then dusk comes, and then the short-eared owl come in. We've talked about eagles at length. All right, so just mentioned eagles feed primarily on fish, as do many birds like osprey, and like then there are certain parts of the world like here the Delaware River, the Hudson. Every spring the shad are swimming up from the ocean, just gazillions of them. They have sex and they die, most of them. So not only like are they hunting fish, but it's just that's really easy. They're doing this right when the bald eagles have chicks. So right when they need to feed their chicks protein, all these fish are dying and floating to the surface of the water. So that's great for the eagles. So not only can you eat fish, but then there's all that aspect. Just switching gears as we start to do the last couple of videos. Obviously things eat birds. All right, so if you're in aquatic environments, snapping turtles eat birds. Last year, there were 6 baby swans at 6.5 Station near Goshen. At the end of the year, there were 2. This year, we started off with 8, and now there are 3. So we think that snapping turtles get the majority of them, as they do ducks, all right, and especially the baby ducklings, all right? So that's a predator. Birds try to hide their nests in holes or like in branches, etc. But if you're like in a swamp, there's really nowhere to go, right? Like if you're in a swamp, you can put it on reeds, but that's going to be visible from above. So that's a red-winged blackbird nest. And so therefore, you're afraid of hawks, etc., which are going to fly over here. And I'll get to, I'm sorry, I'll go back to the raven in a second. But there are a lot of birds which will feed on eggs, like blue jays do, crows do. I'm sorry, I'm in my, yeah, there we go. So red-winged blackbirds and kingbirds, if they see a hawk come into their area, they chase them away, even though the hawk's bigger than they are, because they eat eggs and they eat nests, and their nests are in the open. So they need that defense, or else they wouldn't be able to nest there. Okay. The raven, okay, it's here somewhere, I swear. Yeah. So a lot of things eat eggs. So here is pictures from earlier this spring. Here is what I believe, I think it's a Canada goose nest just because of the size of it. Look, that's a little duck. Here's a raven. Ravens are songbirds, but they can have a 4-foot wingspan. They're huge. But look at it stealing the egg from the Canada goose nest and taking it away. So birds lay eggs, but a lot of birds feed on eggs, as you can see here that this raven is going to do. So a lot of nests not only suffer predation from things like foxes, coyotes, raccoons, skunks, etc., but jays can eat eggs and baby birds. Ravens and crows can. Opossums can eat them at night. All right, so possums are good at finding nests here. And I'm sorry, I know this is going to freak some of you out. Black rat snakes, you see it on the ground, that's about to change. It'll go straight up the tree. All right. So when you're walking in the woods, sometimes there are snakes above you. And one of the reasons they do that is because then they can find nests and birds. So, not only are birds eating all of these things, but then some things prey on them, especially when they are young. So there are snakes, opossums, raccoons, and then even other birds. Adult birds are also food. All right, and there are birds which specialize that. So the accipiter hawks, they are chicken hawks. They are bird hawks. The goshawk gets its name from being a goose hawk. So this is a little one, the sharp-shinned hawk. But there are big ones. Cooper hawks primarily eat birds. Here is a Merlin falcon. This is a juvenile, and you can see here's a dead bird that an adult is going to feed to its juvenile. And so Merlins are falcons that specialize in birds. Red-shouldered hawks specialize in birds more than red-tails, which would eat more rodents. So in summary, just to kind of bring this all together, you need energy and you need carbon. It starts with the green stuff. But who eats the green stuff? Well, on land, little bugs. In the water, little aquatic bugs. And then bigger things eat those, all right? So like maybe like little baby fish are eating those. And then on land, maybe you've got some rodents eating the plant stuff here. But you know, if that's the food chain, now you can have adaptations that jump in at any point, you know, and eat the little aquatic critters or eat the big fish. All right. You can eat the leaves of the plants, eat the seeds of the plants. You can eat, get the nectar of the plants, or you could eat the rodents that eat the plants. All right. Or you could eat the birds that eat the rodents that eat the plants. All right. And so there's just all of these different ways that birds can make a living getting that carbon and energy that they need each day. And obviously critical in food chains. All right. So, you know, I hate to think of it from only our lens, but like we think of it often with insects. Without birds, the insect, you know, populations would be much less. But then other things, the seed dispersal that birds do, the pollination that birds do, really quite valuable. So this was just kind of a quick survey into that. I'll hang around if anyone has any questions. As you're leaving, I've just produced 2 calendars if anyone is interested. One is the Orange County Audubon calendar. One is the Bashakil calendar. What I ask is if you're a member of either of those organizations, then thank you for your yearly donation, which is maintaining the habitat that so many of these birds on. So any donation you want to make, you can put in the envelope there and, you know, take a calendar or 2. I do throw out that they do cost $8 to print, if that factors in, but you're welcome to that. Or if you're not a member and you'd like to be, if you wanted to become a member of either the Bashakil Association or the Audubon, then take a calendar to go along with your membership. I'll bring these all the time if you wanted to think about it. Holiday season coming up where they're great gifts. If you're at home, both the Bashakil calendars you can get at the Mamakating Environmental Education Center. Audubon has an office in Warwick. And so if that's something that would brighten up your holidays, then by all means. If anyone has any questions, shoot them out. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. And next week, we're going to start the seasons like with birds of spring and summer, birds of autumn and winter, and then finally environmental issues in birds. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, the northern pintail was on your video.
The northern pintail is where?
On your video.
Oh, okay.
Video
All
that
right.
you
I
had of
was,
the
no,
ringneck.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant that they're starting to come through. I haven't seen them
They are.
migrate yet.
Oh, we do have them in Dutchess. We've got pintail, green wing teal, scaup.
Took one of the
That's about
Bashakil
it.
ones
Ringneck.
yesterday, but I'm gonna take this too, and I'm gonna donate at the next event.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's the diving ducks. I think it's right around now that they're going to start coming through. Oh, and if anyone was doing this for like a presentation, then if you need like me to sign something or a picture, that's fine. Of course.
One for me, one's for my friend.
Sure.
So much.
You're welcome. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Dash off to the Mern Sheraton.
Ooh, okay. Please say hi to them.
I will.
I'm going to dash off to sword class.
Did it, because they're the white snow geese or something? When do they come?
So I usually see them, I say once every other year, once every third. So it's not a
I
guarantee.
saw once over, I think, over coming into Warwick from Jersey.
Okay, that's a good place. Yeah, yeah. So that's a good place to see them here. You can see them other
So they
places.
come out like maybe.
Usually it's a little colder, but it's going to get cold this week. It has been warm. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been 60. So it's early for them. They would be a winter
Okay.
bird. Yeah, looking forward to it. So when we do our hikes in